All right, welcome to the anatomy study for beginning life drawing. So in this tutorial, we're going to go over, what the project kind of is in terms of general aspects. There's a separate slideshow that goes over everything in more detail for the overview, and you can check that on your own. But for right now, we're just going to go over, the whole process of working and how to get your source material. So the idea here again is we're looking at Leonardo da Vinci's a close-up of one of his anatomy studies, and he would write backwards in Italian. You don't have to do it that way, but you're going to include some writing and basically some anatomy studies. And you can see his pen ink work. He pretty much has like these kind of washes, these sort of tones to the line work. And if you have wash and you have watercolor paper of some sort, you can totally do that. I'm basically just working digitally, of course, but I basically just threw in a background color here. So if you work on colored paper, it's kind of nice if you're doing this in a traditional manner. And then in terms of the writing, basically, if I zoom in here, I have written basically about the anatomy. So the deltoid muscle essentially is the focus here that I've kind of focused on. And I've included a little arrow here you can see here. This part here, right? Let me undo that for a sec. I just realized I don't have black as my foreground color. So this part here, you can see the deltoid muscle, and then here's the definition of that, which if you just Google these kind of things, you can find, deltoid muscle, and here's the little definition about it. I didn't include the entire definition. I skipped it. It's where its name comes from, the Greek letter delta, but the other aspects I've had included in there. In order to get your anatomy references, if you just Google human muscles anatomy, there's tons and tons of images to look at. And so all you have to do is click on one of these and you can save out an image. You can do a screen capture if it's a website that basically prevents you from downloading. Again, this is for education purposes, so we're not getting in trouble. We're not reproducing for commercial purposes anyway. So there's sort of that caveat, but you can use these resources basically as references. And so that's basically what I have done in Photoshop here. I have some photo references that I'll just kind of share with you. Here's one that basically shows off the anatomy of the muscles and the definition of a male figure here. This one is like a sculptural anatomy reference at the top here, which basically it's like a 3D model you can buy, and I do recommend, if you're really into this, you could go buy some 3D models or create your own, which is kind of cool. And then here's a female sort of reference I used for the figure on the right there. So what I'm going to focus on is this one here, and just go over a little bit of detail in terms of how I go about drawing. And so you can see here, I've kind of done sort of a contour line drawing, and I've added some detail in here. Basically, the detailing part is you're going to want to do the striations, the muscles. So those little lines that kind of go across. And then the other thing you're going to want to do is any kind of cross hatching or diagonal line. If you look at Da Vinci here, he had, not in this instance, but he would do a lot of diagonal shading. He did it, especially the skull one, I remember, for his anatomy. He would do these diagonal lines that basically just go diagonal to kind of either set off the object or to essentially make it pop, or just to kind of give it some space. And so you could do that too. You could put in some background lines if you want. I'm not going to do that with this one. What I'm going to focus in on is some of the anatomy and demo how I would do some cross hatching and stuff. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. So essentially here I have these striations of the muscles here, and I'm kind of emphasizing a couple of the separations that you can see here. So there are some clear defined sort of striations, and the other ones I can kind of feather in and make them a little bit lighter as they come in, and then really emphasize some of those thicker ones as they go out. Making a note of the gap between the deltoid and the pectoral muscles, and then the collarbone, which everything kind of latches onto here. That's where these muscles sort of wrap around, right? So I'm just kind of adding, basically feathering in the direction of those. Now you can leave some open areas, like on the deltoid muscle. Here I've kind of left almost like a highlight where light would be coming down and hitting that little bit right there of the muscle, and that's totally fine. You can leave some areas like that, and then shade some other areas darker. So maybe on the back side of this deltoid, I'll kind of go darker on it, and on the back side, you know, I'm seeing this little bit of shadow here in the deltoid casting on the triceps. So I'm thinking I might kind of emphasize that more and kind of just fill that in, and then maybe even just do some, you know, straight lines there to kind of fill in that area. Yeah, but that's basically all you have to do is add some. I mean, this is basically like detail drawing after you draw it out, right? The contour and everything, and you know, so if I was drawing out the contour lines for the ab muscles here, I'd kind of draw these kind of lines, and then, you know, seeing that how they cross into the rib cage here with these muscles, and then the oblique muscles here on the side. So all that, and then going with the striations on top of that is always kind of fun to kind of go around and play around with that. And then of course adding, you know, some deep shadows in certain areas. You want to have a nice balance of contrast. So on this female figure here, basically I could go in and add you know, some deeper contrast lines, maybe right in here, and maybe in the deltoid muscle. I didn't really emphasize this enough, but I think I could go a little bit thicker here, and then kind of emphasize where those triceps sort of connect underneath, and then basically do some diagonal lines here. So any kind of shading that you want to apply to this, you can sort of follow your illustration, and then you could choose a light source if you really want to illuminate it. I can't remember if mine actually had more or less a light source on this female figure. Let me go ahead and turn it on, take a look. Now I mean, it has very subtle light, kind of directional downwards. So I could kind of emphasize that more, you know, by going in here and just kind of exaggerating some of these areas, especially the ones that aren't as defined, you know. This muscle kind of sticks out a little bit too. Oh no, this is the side of the body. That's right. So kind of maybe feather that into the muscles. Get that idea. And then any areas you need to clean up, you know, do that with pencils. If you work, you know, with pencils first, and then you can ink over. It's a little better to do that. Of course, I'm working digitally here, so I can simply just erase directly on there. But yeah, that's basically the process here. So you know, eventually you'll remove your photo sources, and you'll have a nice little, you know, gallop of drawings. So for the whole page, you want at least one full figure. Now that could mean parts of the figure. So notice with the female figure here, I haven't done the legs yet, so I have to include legs somewhere in here. So maybe I have some legs in the bottom left. And that's what I was thinking with that other reference here, this one. So just think of it kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, like what parts you want to show and share off for each drawing. I'm not really seeing the forearms that much, especially on the one on the female figure on the right, her left actually. So this one here, I'm not really seeing a lot of the muscle details. So I could, you know, maybe emphasize this arm and like make it big or something. So thinking about changing scale. So if I make that crazy big on the page, and then you know, maybe emphasize more detail in terms of the muscles, would be kind of cool. Or maybe take one of the legs and make it really big, and then another one a little smaller. That's where you get to have fun, and then include. You don't have to have writing throughout the entire thing. Maybe like 2 or 3 passes of some writing. You can see here Leonardo had like, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 in here in this one. So I'd say a minimum of like 3 little passes of some writing. You know, I could write about pectoral muscles, the obliques, you know, and maybe the deltoids for this example. Or if I focus on the legs, I could focus on some of the leg muscles. So, but have at it, have fun, and then you know, when you turn in your work, just make sure you turn in a photo of your drawing and a photo of your source material also. So if you can basically turn in the screen captures of whatever, you know, anatomy muscles you work from. All right, that's it. Until next time, cheers.